All right, today we're going to take a journey through the 5 surprising developmental stages of your brain. And it turns out, the story of how our minds are built and rebuilt is probably not what you think at all.
So let me just start with a question for you. When do you think the brain truly becomes adult? I mean, most of us would probably say 18, right? Maybe 21. But what if I told you the science points to a date that's much, much later?
Okay, let's just get right into it. This timeline, which is based on some really comprehensive new studies, shows our brain's development happens in 5 totally distinct eras. And just look at that second one. Adolescence doesn't end in your teens. Nope, it goes all the way to age 32. That changes everything, doesn't it?
So let's start at the very beginning with the childhood era. This is from birth all the way up to about age 9. This is where the fundamental architecture of our brain is actually constructed.
You've got to think of it like this. The brain is built from the bottom up. Simple connections form first, and then those support more and more complex ones later on. This means our earliest experiences are literally building the foundation, either a strong one or a weak one, for all of our future learning, our behavior, and even our health.
And the speed of this construction is just, well, it's staggering. Get this number. In the first few years of life, your brain is forming more than 1 million new neural connections every single second. It is the most intense, active period of brain development in our entire lives.
But here's the thing, it's not just about adding connections. The brain also gets smarter by subtracting. So after that initial explosion of growth, this process called synaptic pruning kicks in. You can think of it as the brain's use it or lose it system. It gets rid of the weaker, less used connections to make the whole network way more streamlined and efficient.
And this whole pruning process is driven entirely by experience. Like during this sensory motor stage in the first couple of years, an infant's brain is just rapidly trying to figure out which connections are useful. Every single touch, every sight, every sound helps it decide which pathways to strengthen and which ones to just let go.
So the crucial point here is that this is not a passive process. Healthy brain architecture really relies on something called serve and return. It's that back and forth between a child and their caregivers. A baby serves up a smile or a cry, and the caregiver returns with a response. These interactions are literally a fundamental experience the developing brain expects and absolutely needs.
So all that foundational work in childhood sets the stage for the second and super long era, adolescence. From age 9 all the way to 32, the brain's focus shifts dramatically. It goes from growth to efficiency.
You can really see the contrast here. The childhood brain is kind of exploratory, almost meandering, with this huge overabundance of connections. The adolescent brain, on the other hand, is all about ruthless efficiency. It's refining, it's optimizing, it's streamlining its circuits for peak performance.
And seriously, you have to get this. This really long phase is a unique, once-in-a-lifetime window. It is the only period in our entire lives when the brain's network is actively becoming more efficient. And that whole process keeps going until it finally peaks in our early 30s.
Now, this drive for efficiency unlocks these incredible new cognitive skills, like abstract reasoning and strategic thinking. But all of this intense rewiring also makes the brain more vulnerable, which sadly is why we see an increased risk for the onset of many mental health disorders during this specific time.
So what happens after that peak at age 32? Well, we enter the third and longest era, adulthood. And it begins with the single most significant shift in the brain's entire developmental path.
So after all those years of intense optimization, the brain settles into this long phase of relative stability. Research shows that right around this age, the architecture seems to stabilize, which lines up with what other studies have called a plateau in intelligence and personality.
I just love this quote from the BBC. It captures the change so perfectly. The brain shifts from working like a single unified orchestra to becoming more compartmentalized. Different regions start to work more independently, kind of like band members starting their own solo projects.
But, this stability isn't the end of the story. Not at all. The brain's remodeling continues right into our later years, as we enter the 4th and 5th eras of aging, where adaptation takes on a whole new form.
Starting around age 66, the brain's architecture starts to change again. We see this natural decrease in overall connectivity, which can affect things like how fast we process information. But this is not just a story of decline. The brain keeps remodeling. It keeps finding new pathways. It just shows its remarkable ability to adapt throughout our entire lives.
And all of this brings us to the single most important theme that runs through all 5 of these eras: the profound, continuous impact of our experiences on the brain. In other words, plasticity.
Brain plasticity is really the core concept that makes all of this possible. It's the brain's incredible, lifelong ability to change its own connections and literally rewire itself. It's the physical basis of learning, of memory, of our ability to adapt to pretty much anything.
And this plasticity, well, it kind of comes in 2 main flavors. You've got experience expectant plasticity. That's the development that requires universal things the brain is programmed to expect, like seeing light and hearing sound. Then you have experience-dependent plasticity. That's all about your unique individual life experiences, like learning to play the guitar or picking up a new language that refine and customize your brain.
This quote from the National Academies Press just really drives home the power of experience. It basically says that most of what we think of as our self, our thoughts, our memories, our feelings, is acquired and built by the brain based on what happens to us after we're born.
So look, if you take one thing away from all of this today, let it be this: your brain is not some fixed, static organ. It's a dynamic, living structure that is constantly being built and rebuilt by your experiences, your actions, and your environment.
Brain development is an active, ongoing process, and you are a part of it. So, knowing that your brain is always remodeling, always changing, the only real question left is, what are you going to build next?